Steve Mnuchin because he's in some hot water. This is this Rashida Tlaib and Steve Mnuchin. Is this from yesterday? This is this morning. Okay, House Financial Service hearing. This is following the reports that there's an internal IRS memo that had been drawn up long before Steve Mnuchin pretended like he could reject the congressional demand to see Donald Trump's taxes based upon his assessment that there wasn't a legitimate reason to do so. The IRS had already informed him that not only does there not have to be a legitimate reason, there doesn't have to be a reason. If they request it, we have to give it. The only way to even stop that would be the extraordinary measure of the president invoking executive privilege. It's not clear to me why that would even hold too, but at the very least, it's clear that Steve Mnuchin did not even follow the actual advisement that he got from the IRS, despite the fact that he claimed otherwise. And Tlaib is just like, you got problems, buddy.
I will be remiss as somebody that truly believes in the rule of law. As somebody that has practiced law and as an attorney, I would advise you, Secretary, to get personal legal advice because the cover-up by this administration, it goes beyond just providing the taxes. You can consult the Department of Justice, but you personally making decisions not on the best part of the American people, but to cover up the occupant of the White House. I think you need to be very, very clear about what your role is and what your responsibility is to the American people. This goes beyond just providing taxes, right? It goes about transparency and the fact that no one is above the law. So, Secretary, please seek out legal advice personally of what your obligations are, because the Department of Justice is not protecting you, it's protecting the president.
Ooh, boy. You know, I would remind Steve Mnuchin the best time to get a defense attorney is when you don't need one. Now, I would imagine that time has long gone. Mnuchin should have probably had a defense attorney on retainer for the past 10 years.
Really procrastinating this.
I thought the campaign contributions would take care of it.
But this is this is the type of stuff that is going to lead to impeachment. Here is Representative Alma Adams questioning Minuchin about this IRS memo that clearly undercuts every excuse that Minuchin has even been trying to pretend that he can get away with.
For you to release your tax returns. Are you aware of that?
I am, but that's the president's decision, and I'm not involved in the president's decision.
All right, let me reclaim my time. I want to get through my questions. So are you familiar with Congress's oversight authority?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So it's found in the Constitution and public laws and the House and Senate rules, and it does say that when the request is made by the appropriate offices that he should release them. Are you aware of that?
I've read the law. I've also been advised of the interpretation of the law, and I understand the constitutional issues.
All right. So why haven't you complied with Chairman Neal's request?
Because I think that would be unlawful, as advised by the Department of Justice, and that's why there's a third branch of government that most likely will
we're aware of that. Let me reclaim my time, sir. So are you aware then that by denying this that you are in direct violation of the law?
No, absolutely not. I have been advised I am not violating the law. I never would have done anything that violated the law, and quite the contrary. I've been advised that had I turned them over, I would be violating the law.
All right, let me move on, sir. So are you alleging that Chairman Neal lacks a legislative purpose, and that is the basis for your refusing his request?
Well, given that this is now most likely going to litigation, I think my letters have been quite clear in why we have denied the request, and that's
all right. Okay, sir. Let me move on. Thank you very much. So, are you intending to comply with the request at all?
No, I've made clear. We've sent him a letter that it would be unlawful for us.
All right. Okay, sir. I'm reclaiming my time. Now, have you told the IRS not to respond to Chairman Neal's request?
The IRS independently, the chairman independently wrote a letter concurring with my position.
Yeah, can you give me a yes or no? Have you?
You repeat the question?
Have you or told the IRS not to respond to the request?
Again, I just said the IRS independently wrote a letter concurring
Sir,
with
okay, let me reclaim my time. Can you give me a yes or no?
I don't understand.
All right, okay, you will not, you won't.
Now, he understands the question. The question isn't whether the IRS wrote a letter. The question is, did you tell the IRS not to do it? Because now it seems very suspicious that the 10-page memo outlining all the reasons why the IRS must comply with this request from Congress was ignored. Like, on what basis would the IRS chief make an independent determination that he shouldn't give the taxes to Congress when their own internal review says they've got to? So Steve Mnuchin will not answer that question as to whether he was the one who directed the IRS to not give it. And he's asked the question 2 times there, and he keeps saying, they wrote a letter. Well, that's not the answer to, did you tell them to withhold the taxes?
Was it against your instructions?
I mean, there's no follow-up. He won't answer the first one. That they wrote a letter independently could have easily happened after he said, don't release the taxes. And then the IRS chief was like, I've been told by my boss at Treasury, don't release the taxes, and I'm getting a request, so I'm going to write a letter. That's how you write a letter independently after you've been told not to do something.
Where does this lead to?
I'll tell you where it leads to. Here's Nancy Pelosi, who so far has probably been the most outspoken bulwark against impeachment in the Democratic caucus. Most outspoken. I mean, maybe she's doing it on behalf of members of hers that are in purple districts. Maybe this is the price that she, is paying to get them to vote with her on other things. I don't know. But what I think we're starting to witness now is her plan B. I think she did not want to go to impeachment, but I think this is where pressure starts to have implications. And not just pressure. I mean, look, the pressure is founded on events that have taken place in the past 2 or 3 weeks. Barr refusing to testify, Minuchin lying, withholding of documents, not even going with the EPA. EPA ignored Congress to talk about their plans to basically allow for more mercury in the air. So here she is. She's talking about, well, listen to this.
It was a very positive meeting, a respectful sharing of ideas, and I think a very impressive presentation by our chairs. We do believe that it's important for to follow the facts. We believe that no one is above the law, including the President of the United States, and we believe that the President of the United States is engaged in a cover-up, and that was the nature of the meeting.
So they've shared ideas, and they believe that the President of the United States is involved in a cover-up. What we're watching is, I think, and I don't think this was Nancy Pelosi's plan. I think Nancy Pelosi's plan was no impeachment. Let's just try and focus on doing business so that we cannot be criticized as a do-nothing Congress. I mean, a dumb idea, but that was her plan. But now I think that the actions of the Trump administration, and I think the Trump administration is probably baiting the Democrats into calling for impeachment. But again, they're between a rock and a hard place, because it's not just you don't just do things. You don't just not impeach because you think Trump wants you to impeach. You also have to calculate in what are the costs of us not doing this. And maybe Donald Trump is not such a great strategist. Maybe he's just a better tactician Maybe he's just a good blowhard. Maybe he can just motivate racialized politics. I mean, there's a whole host of other things that you have to take into consideration. So I think what's happening with Pelosi right now, this is my sense, and I don't think this is a fait accompli. I think there needs to be more, but I think it feels like it's inevitable that it's going this way. I think we're watching Pelosi change her mind and do so in a way. I believe that she's coming to the conclusion that, like, okay, the pro-impeachment force is too strong. So instead of me just reversing myself, I am going to publicly show how I'm being convinced. And this is why the American public should be convinced. I think this is a plan B for her, but this is what you would do to execute it.
Yeah. I mean, here's what I think happened is that they polled people and found out that Democrats don't believe that impeachment is going to do anything. And they kind of mistook that for they don't want impeachment, when in fact, like, I absolutely want impeachment, but I don't believe the Democrats are going to do it. Like, that's why I groaned when Rashida Tlaib was like, let's impeach the motherfucker. Not because I don't want it to happen, but because I don't think they're going to do it. And now, like, they are finally responding to what their base actually wants.
Well, I mean, I think her calculation could also be, I need to protect those Congress folks who won from purple districts, who are going to be up for re-election in 2 years in districts that, you know, aren't safe districts. And I protect those members because that's what protects our majority. And in return from them, they know I'm protecting them, so I get certain votes. They have to make some hard votes on X, Y, Z. I protect them on impeachment. But it's unclear whether impeachment will, like you say, actually endanger these people. And the more that she has and shows political pressure on her, the easier it is for her to keep those people in line, even if she ultimately comes down in favor of impeachment. I mean, this stuff is, look, and here's the thing. People, and I'm not saying you're doing this, but you read this, you know, too many people who on the left, I'm sure there's similar problems on the right, but there's just too many people who perceive this as an ideological thing, as opposed to just straight strategy or tactical questions. And her and Pelosi's perspective on this is obviously different than ours. She has a better sense of, on some level, of like what's going on within her caucus than we do. But at the same time, you know, she's also in a bubble. And she also, is naturally, those in power are naturally very often more conservative, not ideologically, but in terms of the way they use their power.
I had a friend who was on a plane next to a staffer. I can't remember what the senator was, a Democratic senator from the Northeast. And the staffer was currently getting their mind blown by Jane Mayer's dark money. So that's where they were at.
Right.